As we come to the close of this liturgical year, our scripture lessons turn to some difficult apocalyptic imagery. What are we to make of these passages? Theologian David Lewis says that apocalyptic passages were meant to help believers who were struggling from oppression and persecution to put their struggle into the context of the struggle between God and the forces of evil. While we might not be persecuted because of our faith, Christians in the United States are not being arrested or oppressed. Still, each one of us will have times of conflict and chaos in our lives. There will be times of change that are outside of our control. And so these passages, like the rest of Scripture, continue to be relevant to us, whatever our current conditions. The text warns disciples of every age that sufferings will come, and gives us the comforting assurance of our ability to continue to thrive in new circumstances because of God's continuing presence with us. After all the dire warnings from Jesus about the days to come, he adds the comfort, "But not one hair of your head will be touched, and by your perseverance you will gain your souls." Theologian Fred Craddock wrote that disciples are not exempt from suffering, but in fact are guaranteed it. All we have to do is look at Jesus' life and ministry. As a child, Jesus survived Herod's execution of all the babies in Bethlehem. He grew up in a time of oppressive occupation by the Roman government and was arrested, tortured, and put to death by the rulers of society because of his advocacy of those who were oppressed and his unrelenting critique of the powers that be. If we are true to the teaching and example of Jesus, if we are following Jesus, we won't be making everyone happy. Our beliefs and the actions that those beliefs inspire will be annoying to those who are heavily invested in the continuation of the status quo. In the passage we read this morning, Jesus tells his disciples, those who are admiring the beauty of the temple, "The days will come when not one stone will be left on another. All will be thrown down." And indeed, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. What a shock to be told such a thing. That their beloved, massive monument to the glory of God, the place where God was thought to dwell in the Holy of Holies, the temple which sustained the people of God for over 420 years, would not last forever, that it would be destroyed. The temple was the center of the life of faith for Jewish people all over that region. People of faith made pilgrimages to the temple for the important festivals and milestones of their lives. If that building and the institution it represented was destroyed, where would their faith be? Where would God be? This year at our diocesan convention, we were so blessed to have the Right Reverend Barbara Harris as our preacher. Now retired Bishop Harris was the first woman ordained a bishop in the worldwide Anglican Communion. In her sermon, she differentiated between the institutional church and the way of Jesus as a movement. While institutions tend to value their own survival, she said, movements have been the impetus for positive change throughout history. Think of the child labor movement, the abolitionist movement, the civil rights movement, the labor movement, or any of the other movements for social change in the past or the present. Movements change attitudes and change hearts by the power of dedication to a cause that one believes in wholeheartedly. Unlike an institution, she said, movements have not lost their sense of urgency or their prime objective. People involved in a movement recognize that they're going to be considered the fringes of society. They understand the necessity of personal sacrifice and that there will be those who will thwart their cause by any means. Harris told us that the prime objective of the Jesus movement, the very beginning of the Jesus movement, was when Jesus read from the scroll of the prophet Isaiah in his hometown, in which he proclaimed the year of God's favor for all people. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, he read, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. With those words, Jesus threw down the gauntlet to the powers that be. Bishop Harris then posed to us the following question: what movement are we following? Are we following Jesus? Or have we dedicated ourselves only to keeping the institutional church going? Sometimes those are the same thing. Many times they are not. Bishop Harris said that it's important that in the institutional church that we maintain our integrity and our identity as a community of believers who, through mutual discernment, determine appropriate ethical and moral positions as new occasions arise. We've received serious news about the institutional church in 21st century America. We've been warned that how we worship, how we organize ourselves, and how we do church may look very different in the decades ahead. For many people, church has come to seem like some kind of duty one must fulfill, which in turn becomes a nuisance. And yet, the way of Jesus will continue. The Church of God as a movement of faithful people who follow Jesus in their lives is not going anywhere. All these walls might come down, but by your perseverance, you will gain your souls. Not a hair of your head will be harmed. In the midst of circumstances that test us, in the days when things are confusing and we're not sure what will happen next, we can be assured of God's presence with us, guiding us on in the ways that God would have us go, guiding us to follow Jesus' radical way of love. Amen.